The cats and I are in the process of packing up all of our stuff and moving. And with that comes a lot of happiness, excitement, and anticipation. But I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't also a little bit of nervousness and anxiety that comes with saying goodbye to this version of my life. It's caused me to take a closer look at some of the less comfortable emotions that come with big life changes and how we can go about making sure that they don't hold us back. There's plenty of reasons why a person's life might change. Moving is just one example, but for over a year now, I've had a pretty succinct set of routines. I've been going to the same places, seeing the same people, I've been around a lot of the same stuff, and I've built comfort around those things. Now my life will change and I'll have to rebuild a lot of that. There's plenty of decisions like this, whether it's changing jobs, starting or ending a relationship, going off to college, whatever the decision might be, it's the change that it brings that can be a little intimidating. This will actually be the 11th time that I've moved in my life, so I'm pretty accustomed to that rebuild, and honestly, I kind of like it. I like the opportunity to iterate and apply new things that I've learned to my life, but still, every time it's a little sad and it's a little scary. At the very least, it's a little bit uncomfortable. There are a few reasons behind this discomfort. For starters, there is a lot of unknowns inherent in change, and unknowns always spark anxiety. Then there's the possibility that you're wrong, that you just made the wrong decision, not to mention the possibility that you've made the right one. For plenty of us, success is just as scary as failure. And then you have the social pressure. What other people will think about the decisions you've made and the results of those decisions. We might not be proud of all of these things, but they are there. All of these fears and anxieties coalesce around a few cognitive biases, starting with emotional homeostasis. Homeostasis is the process by which our bodies maintain physiological stability. For example, if we get too warm, we'll start to sweat to cool our bodies down. On the other hand, when we get too cold, we'll start to shiver to warm our bodies back up. Our brains have a very similar mechanism. We prefer predictability. We all love and seek out novelty in some shape or form, but our brains like to be anchored in the reliable and dependable outcomes that come with familiarity. In the same way that our bodies will try to return to normal temperatures if we get too hot or cold, our brains will try to return to familiarity if we stray too far away from it. Since we have this subconscious preference for homeostasis, changes that disrupt it will always seem that much more daunting. Then there's loss aversion. Loss aversion was first identified by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winning psychologists and economists who wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, which is absolutely fantastic, and you should read it if you haven't already gotten a chance. But the theory basically suggests that humans are more likely to be dissatisfied by losing things than they are to be satisfied by gaining things. So in other words, if you gave a human $100, the satisfaction they felt would be less than the dissatisfaction they would feel if you took $100 away from that same person. The theory also suggests that humans are likely to overinflate the value of things that they possess. So if you and your friend both own the same car, it's completely identical in every possible way, you're still probably going to think that yours is worth more simply because it's yours. It's completely irrational, but I think a lot of us would be able to identify certain things in our lives where these theories were certainly the case. The point is that if we are prone to overvaluing things that we have, we're also going to be prone to undervaluing the hypothetical gains that we would get from making big changes in our life. When emotional homeostasis gets together with loss aversion, it creates cognitive inertia. In physics, inertia is the resistance that a physical object has to changes in velocity or direction. When an object is in motion, it takes a considerable amount of force to change either of those two things. People are kind of similar. Unless change happens, unless forces are acted upon our lives, they're liable to just kind of continue on in the same direction. But when that change does happen, whether it's self-directed or happens externally, there will be resistance and we will have to work to adjust to it. If we're lucky, the work isn't all that hard because we're highly incentivized. Take this move, for example. Aaron and I love each other and we want to live together. It's really inconvenient to live out of 2 apartments, and we're ready to move on to the next stage in our relationship. So it's pretty easy to make the change. But you're not always going to be so lucky. Sometimes the path to a positive outcome is a lot less clear, or worse, you know for a fact that there's going to be a lot of difficult times ahead during that change. The inertia sets in when we start to second guess whether or not it's actually worth it to move forward. How do we move past that? First off, try not to associate the nervousness or anxiety you feel about change with danger, because you're always going to feel those things when you add uncertainty to your life. In fact, the persistent absence of uncertainty is probably a pretty good sign that you're not growing. The process of seeking out uncertainty and pushing through it is the process of growth. So remember, those emotions are always going to be there by default. We also want to be careful that we're not overvaluing our current situation just because it's what we have and undervaluing the potential for change because we don't have it yet. Let's take, for example, changing jobs. For whatever reason, you're considering leaving your current job for a new one, but you feel resistance inside. Ask yourself, do I like this job because it's fulfilling, because it satisfies me, because it's getting me closer to long-term goals? Or do I like this job because it's safe, it's secure, it's familiar, and it's what I know? On the flip side, try to resist the urge to think about the work that it's going to take to change as a cost. It's going to be tempting to think, oh man, I don't want to be the new person again. I'm going to have to learn all new stuff. I'm going to have to rebuild my credibility. That's the wrong mentality. Instead, consider, if I was just as familiar and well established in this new job as I am now, would I like it more? Would it get me closer to my long-term goals? If the answer is yes, then go for it. Because at the end of the day, when all that work is said and done, you're actually going to flip everything around. Whereas right now, it feels really intimidating. Chances are, once it's all done, you're going to look back and think, it wasn't all that bad. Our brains are weird like that. The best advice that we can take from this is to start valuing the multiplier effects that come from working on this change. Right now, I'm reading a book called Aging Well. It's by George Vaillant. He's a researcher at Harvard Medical School. And he looks really carefully at these handful of longitudinal studies that went into adult development. He talks about how important it is to work on identity, to kind of build a sense of oneself. And part of that is individualization. It's the process of removing ourselves from our family and place of origin and deciding what we value, what our passions are, what our own principles are. The process of change is also the process of individualization. When we're working on change, the people we meet, the things we accomplish, the places we go, that will be what becomes our lives. Our lives are going to change one way or another, so we might as well take the power that we have to alter our own trajectories, because working through that change is how we grow as individuals. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll talk to you next week.